And, I had to kind of take a step back and get serious about a career. Because there was one point in my life where I used to think, man, if I became a restaurant manager, that was like the kiss of death. Like, it means I'd failed in life.
Welcome to The Bottom Line, the podcast that brings you real stories behind real restaurants. In each episode, we explore the decisions, systems, and stories behind the most successful restaurants out there in the market. No fluff, no hype. Just real operators, real challenges, and real advice from people who know how to get results. Let's get to the bottom line.
Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I have with me my mentor, a great restaurateur and advisor to many successful restaurants, Greg Provance. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, man. So good to be here. Really happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. He has an amazing positive energy, super knowledgeable. Love every conversation I have had with him. Thank you very much for joining me today. Greg, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and talk about your IMDb page? There's an inside joke here about somebody whom I don't know if it's a mutual love and respect, or it's just me with the love and respect for that certain individual. Maybe Greg is just a professional, and then your experiences as a restaurateur and as an amazing consultant helping restaurants.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate it. I love that. Yeah, so I used to be in the entertainment industry, and that was kind of how, my career in restaurants started before that. My first job was at 14 years old at Popeye's Chicken. A way for me to hang out with my friends and make some money to buy a new surfboard when I was a kid. But all along the way of, kind of working in entertainment, of course, I was bartending and waiting tables and stuff to make ends meet. It's kind of what we do in New York and Hollywood and all those places that we were kind of trekking around. And, it was interesting because there was a point in life where, I started to kind of sprout a family and started to think, oh man, I might need to get, really serious about a career. And, there's some good things in entertainment happening, but as you may know, it's pretty up and down. And I had to kind of take a step back and get serious about a career. The only skill set I think I'd felt like I'd developed over those years was restaurants. And so I figured, okay, might as well go that direction. Because there was one point in my life where I used to think, man, if I became a restaurant owner or a restaurant manager, that was like the kiss of death. Like, it means I'd failed in life, and that's what I really thought for many years. But then, it actually, the restaurant industry really afforded me a way to still kind of, scratch that creative itch and really be, involved in people and developing people, which is something I became very, very passionate about over the years and still am. And it has afforded me an amazing life, with all the talk of the grind and the hours and all the risk and all that kind of stuff. I can't imagine any other industry, really kind of having devoted this many years to. And really, it's enriched my life in so many ways, just not that kind of 9-to-5 office kind of guy. As many, and so it's been great. My career has spanned, decades now. I've worked in pretty much every type of concept. I've owned multiple concepts now. And now, most recently, I've devoted most of my energy to, as you mentioned, my consulting firm. And that allows me the opportunity to really help a lot of different types of organizations and different independent owners to scale their brands. We have, clients all across the United States now, and it's just been great. It's been a really gratifying sort of way of being, and really, really enjoyed it. And especially these last few years in particular, it's been amazing because, I've really been able to dive deep into a lot of different types of operations. And as much as I'm helping people, I'm also learning from them as I go. Right? Yeah. You probably feel that way too, right?
We had two concepts. One is the ultra mega fine dining steakhouse, 1 month worth of McLaren's production on all the Lambos in Dallas at the door, supermodels and celebrities. The second concept is the fast casual burger brand that didn't really take off. But what I knew was, yes, I did it in a regional, like in the US, did work with the Middle East part as well. Bounce some ideas with the folks in Europe, which is what happens in a in a like, global, it's not global, but maybe like surrounds half the globe. What I knew in terms of like systems, processes, what's possible, or the business models were limited to, what I worked on. I learned so much more into this and met with awesome people, learned a lot of systems, learned a lot of different ways of tackling. Albeit like there is one way to operate, but like what is important is different in a ultra mega high end versus fast casual versus casual. The importance and what's the priority is different across all of these different channels.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Greg, you own a very successful Italian restaurant. You developed it into a franchise. Am I right?
Yeah. So I actually, it's interesting. I actually sold that restaurant a little while back, and we had built out a franchise model, and it was a healthy Italian fast casual concept. And the units that are still there are doing great. They're doing amazing, actually. I'm not sure if my former partner is really continuing along the franchise route that we started. I'm not sure about that, but we definitely built something pretty amazing.
That's awesome. In my past life, I worked with like the largest companies in the world. But what I love about, working with restaurants is entrepreneurship. Somebody put their blood and sweat, their whole ideas every day. They went and tinkered with it and developed something better. Day in and day out. And that's the entrepreneur like in front of you. Vice president of whatever division is as smart as that guy is, never really had to like scrape on a day-to-day basis as we did in the restaurants, deal with the crisis that we had to. So it creates a tough, smart and solution-oriented individual. I think like restaurants. I think business schools should study restaurants and maybe like put their people in restaurant management, for a year or two.
Absolutely. I mean, wholeheartedly believe that. I mean, restaurateurs are some of the most innovative, hardworking, group of people out there. I mean, and talk about having to come up with solutions on the fly, right? I mean, look, any business is not without its challenges, but I really feel like our industry is very unique in that sense. There's so many moving parts. There's so many things that, there's so many ways to make money and so many ways to lose money. And it never ends, right? Well, I mean, the resilience I think that, restaurant owners and operators portray on a daily basis is just nothing short of amazing. They're heroes. They really are, and we believe that at our core. And I also, the innovation piece, I love working with the entrepreneurial side of things because it does, it really kind of puts into perspective of like the idea of putting solutions in that maybe are kind of out of the box, right? And I think the best operators and the most successful long-term operations that I see are those that, are able to apply solutions that aren't just the status quo, right? It's like we don't want to just keep doing things because that we've always done them. We always want to be kind of like innovating and thinking outside the box and seeing things from a different perspective. And I think those are the most successful operators that I see. Are those ones that can kind of think quickly, that can pivot, that can see things almost, I don't want to say before they happen, but can anticipate, and
prepare.
Yeah, and that can execute, and that aren't afraid to kind of get in there and try things. And some things work, some things don't, but just really being, innovative. And I think restaurateurs are uniquely disposed to be those types of people. Yeah.
Life always throws us like lemons, right? Like one lemon after another lemon. I got so many, and I was an operator. Like now I'm doing exactly what I enjoy. Like take this, make it better, spread happiness. In my past life, like not every day was so joyous, right? So life throws us like constant lemons. As I always say, like product goes bad. Bad product doesn't get good all of a sudden. So all of the surprises, I mean, maybe other than maybe like some events or something that's happening in your city, but most of the events, like somebody who wasn't scheduled isn't gonna show up, but somebody who's scheduled may not show up, right? An equipment may not work at a crucial time, Friday evening service. You will scramble to get it fixed. But a magical equipment isn't gonna. So all surprises are bad, So I think like the people who actually made it, yes, like life throws like constant lemons at us, yes, and There are so many struggles along the way, but the people who the persistence angle and who stay curious, who I think restaurateurs are also, as much as we are innovative, right? I'm not going to put myself in the innovative bucket, but maybe solution oriented bucket I would be. We are also conservative in our thinking in a way that's like, we always think like I've done it, this is how it is done. I'm not gonna, like explore other angles unless my best buddy next door tells me otherwise. So the difficult thing about restaurants is it's a manufacturing and service operation combined into two. So I spent like a good 7-8 years working with manufacturing operations all across the globe, like Ford Motor Company, Dana Corporation, Clarion, a lot of automotive and chemical manufacturers. I've been to 25 manufacturing plants, and their plants and their other businesses are separate, right? They are different divisions. So these are different skills, and nobody claims they are an expert in every single thing, right? Like I see restaurants, like restaurateurs who have like 8-9 restaurants, and they are doing their own bookkeeping, right? They are experts in procurement. Maybe marketing isn't the thing that they deal with, since it involves actually revenue. So I caught a bug from Italy, from my trip from Italy. I do apologize. When there are some like buckets of lemons thrown at you, even if somebody says like, here is the, basket of gold, you only need to do this, not now. But when are you going to make that change? I think the problem is we have such a skill gap in the restaurants that when I say skill gap, what I mean is somebody who does operations. And when we say operations, it's basically like there's someone does back of house, someone does front of house, and the job descriptions are so like tiny, meaning back of house's job description is to put the food on the table. So what it means, buy the food somehow, cook it somehow, put it in front, right? And front of the house in many restaurants is super simple. Get the order, put the guest on the table, this and that. And then the intersections in terms of how the money angle is always avoided by everybody. And everybody just, I think we play, and I was guilty of the same again in many, many years of doing this. We tend to willfully ignore how some things are done. Just an example. Stock counts are super important if you want to learn what your cost is, right? And without this one component, then you don't know what your food cost is. If you don't know your food cost, how are you going to manage the entire business? Unless you are a Michelin star restaurant, everybody comes in at like $700 per person, then yes, I wouldn't care it either, right? How much you paid for the plum doesn't really matter if that plum is sold at like $700. So when will the time come, I think, is the crucial element. Like we open the restaurants, 1 month passes, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, but time never comes. 2 years later, we are opening a new restaurant when the existing restaurant is at the same level as at the time, maybe like 2 months after opening. Now we know who is employed there, like people aren't coming and going all the time, but still you have retention issues, you have guest issues. You have like 4.1, like stars in Google Maps. You still haven't solved like a lot of the issues. And before you stabilize, put that into a system. Because if you are going to open this restaurant, deal with the freaking construction, which I freaking hate. If you're going to do the construction, all of these decisions, hire and bring people in, all this bunch of things, then you shouldn't be thinking about a ton about like solving the problems of the existing ones. If you are doing that, then suddenly I think like all the eggs in the same basket, and you will drop the eggs and like collapse and all that kind of stuff. I think like as innovative as we are, as problem solving as we are, there comes a time when I think we say like enough is enough. I'm not gonna deal with any new things, and this is it. This is as far as I go, and I think that basically limits certain restaurateurs into 1 or 2 after 20 years. Versus you see, like I talked to a guy, a very young guy recently. He has like 5 restaurants at the age of like 26. So I think that is the difference between one group and then the ones that don't hold them. I'm not gonna say don't hold. Because I understand, I've been there, like it's painful, right? Some of the most painful and some of the most cherished memories that I had in my 20 something years of career were in restaurants. There should come a time that like, okay, like a lot of lemons, I take it, rest a bit, maybe 1 week, but then you need to change the gear a bit, put a bit more gas and like go back to your normal life. Don't live with the trauma is what I'm saying. Don't, otherwise 20 years you will have 1 or 2 locations when you could have had like 6 that you can pass to the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing there is that this attention to basic business fundamentals, right? And look, so many people start any business because they're great at what they do, right? And restaurants are no different, right? You have a chef that has the best recipe for, I don't know, flan, you know what I mean, or whatever it is.
Mama's special sauce
down through generations, and it's like, oh my gosh, people come for miles for this, and that's great, right? That's a good reason to get into business. The problem that we see time and time again is that those people are not necessarily business people, right? They don't have a business acumen, and they're certainly not necessarily great at managing people, right? Different skill sets, as you mentioned. And so, one of the things that we really need to encourage, these great operators or these great chefs and these wonderfully talented people to do is to get really, masterful at those basic business processes that are necessary for us to build and grow and scale a business. And so, I mean, I see it time and time again, man. I can't tell you how many times where I've, met with a new client. We've, got all these great, thoughts around how to help them scale their business. And I say, okay, let's look at your inventory and let's look at your P&L. And I mean, I can't tell you the percentage. It's a way higher percentage than not that look at you like deer in the headlights. Oh, well, we just changed bookkeepers, or, oh yeah, we really haven't done inventory in a little while, or, those types of things happens all the time. And I'm not even talking about just your mom and pop 1 or 2 locations. I'm talking about, I've seen operations that have multiple units that are not doing these fundamental things. And it's not because they don't want to, or even maybe because they don't know how. Maybe they just, you got tired, or they don't have the resources. They just decided something else was a priority. But it's really, so important that we get back to those basics if we really want to get serious about growing and scaling our business, right? And that's why we, when we work with people, we look for those operators that are serious about growth. They really want to master these things. And sometimes it's just a little bit of shame and guilt, because they feel like embarrassed about the fact that it's not going on. They know they should be doing it, but they're not, and that's kind of the unspoken, secret, that, people, the dirty little secret people don't talk about behind closed doors. But it happens a lot. It happens way more often than you would think. And so, what that tells me is that there's a real need for that level of support, for people to just get really, serious about learning those and practicing and getting consistency around those fundamentals. Super, super important.
It's exactly why I started this. Like my options were like to be the CFO for another super successful brand. But then I asked myself, am I really excited to do that again? I've already done it once, and I enjoyed it tremendously, a lot of challenges and stuff, but why do it for one when I can do it for 20 different businesses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly my feeling. 100%. We've done it for ourselves. We've been able to be successful, and it's not that we don't like it. I mean, I'm kicking around an idea for a concept right now that I'm thinking I might pull the trigger on. So there's always that pull to keep, going in operations. But no, it is great when you can
innovative niche, right?
People in this way. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. That's Ella, close the door. Do you want to say hi to? No. Okay, you have to go and close the door. Go. I'm sorry. Close the door.
I love it.
So,
you should leave that in.
Have you seen the British guy? Like he's talking about like World War III or something, and
yes,
like super like British guy, and then like his kids are like,
yeah. It's so great. Such a sign of the times, man. You know? I mean, I'm in my underwear right now. You can't tell. That's great. I love that.
So we covered that. We talked about how we could, there isn't 50 different ways to be successful in business, especially in this business. Like I worked in a super niche concept. Yes, we were making money hand over fist. Yes. Yes. I went to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to help with them. The reason I say this is you have never seen like more money made in restauranting. Yes. But they could still make, you could still lower their food cost by 40%. Literally 40%. 40%. Yes. Ridiculous amount of money, more ridiculous amounts of money. Yes, there is this like super duper niche, like this is basically rock star territory. Maybe Taylor Swift territory. Like I'm going to put it over here. Yes. Taylor Swift. I feel like restaurants are like musicians, right? We always talk about the Taylor Swift that I'm going to put like here on the screen, but most of restaurants are actually here. Right here, right? We always talk about Taylor Swift, so everybody thinks like the business is Taylor Swift. Yes, I worked with a Taylor Swift. Yes, the money was made like there is no tomorrow. Niche concept, amazing stuff. I pulled in so many levers that created the most profitable restaurants in the world. But for anybody here, for anybody over here, maybe not even here, for here, it's about survival. Average restaurant profitability is only 5%. When it's only 5%, construction starts next door. You lost one of the 3 restaurants that one owns is now in the red. So we need to look at this and manage this as a business. And the thing is, it's not really like one thing or another thing. What I mean is, it's not really like profitability. You're not doing this for the sake of money. Like in SpongeBob, the crab says money, because money. No, it's because you do this because of consistency. So there is this restaurant in a state that I have never visited. Maybe I went to a plant there, but not to this restaurant. And I knew more about what was not happening in his restaurant than the owner itself. How? Looking at the data. So I'm not saying like data replaces everything, but one of the 3 restaurants is using like breast instead of thighs in a recipe. You sell 100 burgers, 125 patties are used, 150 buns are used. Why? Is this a consistency issue? Is this a training issue? Basically, are you providing your guests with subpar products that they are returning? What is going on over here? Or is somebody stealing? That's why like these integrated systems, these SOPs were created in industries 100 years before restaurants, before the time of the restaurants, right? Ford Motor Company was manufacturing 500,000 Model Ts in like 1907, and like 98% of restaurants are still not there. When I talk to these like inventory management tool companies, I ask them questions that are like, you are the first person to ask this question. And why? Why? Because, people aren't really taking full advantage of these tools and resources that are available to them. And because we are here in terms of our like business management skills doesn't mean that like this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like if I'm asking a question over here, doesn't mean that this is needless or unnecessary. Yes, there is a big gap in between, but like you need to maybe like raise the bar a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what I hear you saying too is we need to install the systems. Yes. Right. We need to have the systems, and the systems should be something that are going to solve a particular problem. Right. So for instance, if I'm trying to, streamline my to-go process, let's say, right? And I want to make sure that items aren't being forgotten and that everything is put in the right bags and it's in a timely manner, all that stuff. Well, I need to come up with a system for that, right? And then, but the problem I see sometimes is people, they don't have the system, number one, but then if they do, they're not managing it, right? So once the system's installed, it actually needs to be managed. So there needs to be accountability. And, the way I see it in terms of training our teams to that level of accountability, it's like we need to pick 1 or 2 very, very impactful, crucial things to focus on, and then just be relentless about making sure that system is being worked and optimized and continuously improved upon until it's just part of how we do things. And there's never a question. That way, when any new person comes into our team and they're automatically trained on it because that's just how we do it. Right. And no team member is going to let it drop because that's just part of the fabric of what we do. You know, this item goes here, it gets checked off here, it gets put in this here, and then this person, you know, I mean, every part of that system has to be sort of relentlessly trained until it's part of what we do. And that goes for every system that we have. It's funny because I'm in the camp of, you know, we want to have smart systems, but we don't want death by process either, right?
That's right.
We want to be able to be malleable. We want to be able to make quick decisions. I want operators that are going to be able to make quick, decisive action when things are happening. They need to be able to break the mold and break the rules sometime to get things done the way they need to be done. But they also need to be accountable to making sure that the systems that we put in place are optimized, they're managed, and their data is used, just to your point, right? And so that's what makes great operations is when we're able to really focus on those things and put the time and effort we need on the front end to get that system just well oiled. Then it becomes a part of the fabric of what we do. And then we move on to the next and just build it like brick by brick.
What's great about restaurant industry is like, if you think about all the operational, like psychologists and whatnot, what they are going to tell you is like changing a behavior requires one to repeat something like 7 times. It's super hard to change established behavior. And in restaurants, it's actually like, I found this to be like the easiest industry to change the behavior. And I'm going to come to why. But I think the most important thing I want to emphasize is if one has like 2-3 locations, if a restaurateur has 2-3 locations, they are looking to go up to 8. Like now, yesterday was the time to establish the systems, not when you open the next location or the next location over, because it's harder to change the behavior than to open up something new.
Absolutely.
When you open the new locations, when you are hiring those folks, it's easy to train them. It's hard to change the behavior. To change the behavior, the reason why it's good in restaurants is, number one, people want to do well. Number two, I think what boils down to the heart of the second thing that I love about restaurants. So I love automotive, right? Like automotive is in my heart. Literally, probably like mercury and plastic is in my blood at this point in Jaksha after visiting a million plants. But people aren't excited. Like even in Detroit, people weren't really like excited about like their grandfather and their great grandfather who worked at Ford. They work at Ford. They don't look at Ford the way that I looked at work. I felt like my blood was like running blue from Ford. But restaurants, when they are successful, people associate themselves with that brand, not the Excel manufacturer. Like you don't associate yourself with, we make the best stabilizing bars in the world. People. So when I worked with like $1 billion organizations, nobody gave me a call about, the reservations. When I worked on this side, everybody was my buddy, right? That's the power of the restaurant.
Yep.
You get friends with like celebrities and that affection, that connection with your restaurant, and you can pump that when your brand is successful. People want to be, it's more important than money. It's almost like a drug. It's almost like a drug. Like you want to be associated with that brand, be part of that. And it's more important than if the next door pays you 10% over. The great thing is when we come in and change the economic dynamics, like we pay them 15% more because the restaurant is making so much more money, and we want only the good people to stay, the people who will abide by the new rules, accountability and whatnot, right? So we pay them, but they are also part of something more successful. And you created a new third-party delivery system, right? That is changing the odds for so many restaurants.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we've found over the years that a lot of restaurant owners tend to struggle with, obviously, is the marketing piece, right? And people are looking at, they typically, the scenario is, they hire a marketing company hoping that they're going to be the silver bullet, bring a bunch of people in, they promise them the world, and then they don't get the ROI they're looking for. They're spending all this money on ads and they just don't know where it's going. There's churn, there's burn, all that kind of stuff. And that's a typical scenario. We've probably seen it across multiple industries, but especially in the restaurants. It's hard to quantify the ROI when you're on, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and those types of things. It's necessary. We want brand awareness. We want to be able to utilize those platforms for what they offer, and the organic, sort of connection and all of that stuff is very important. Google, all of it. But it's interesting because I have a lot of conversations, with these restaurant owners and the frustrations that they're feeling. And one thing that always comes up is, the conversation around third-party deliveries, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, all that. And the first thing that I hear when you mention something like that is, 30%, right? And, I've polled many audiences on this and I've asked the question many times, how do you feel about these third parties? And most operators feel like it's a necessary evil, right? It's like, they kind of got us because we have to use them and we have to pay them this 30%, right? And so, first of all, you don't have to do anything. You probably should because, it's kind of the way things are going.
Dollars. Because it brings you the dollars.
Right. But I have to say I have a bit of an opposing view on how I see these platforms, right? Because where most people are kind of playing the victim role, let's be honest, we're the victim here because we're getting raped by these companies, right? Then when you're in that mindset, you're not opening yourself to the opportunity that those platforms actually present to you. And I say that because, and I feel strongly that a lot of these platforms, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, depending on, they're all, have a bit of more market share in different markets. These platforms are a huge marketing opportunity for your brand and guest acquisition opportunity. Right. And they're different in the way that if you think about it in terms of like, if I go and spend, say, $5,000 on ad spend in, the Meta and Google, and I'm trying to track that ROI and I can see, somebody clicked my menu or clicked for directions and maybe they came in. I still don't know if they came in and bought, right? Or maybe I gave them a coupon code on there or something and they used it and I could track it that way. But if you really look at your spend versus the ROI or the conceived ROI that you can get from some of these measurables, it's kind of tough to see where your money's going and if it's, really worth it. And I would contend you're probably spending upwards of that 30% without really knowing if you got a sale. However, on the third party platforms, you're not paying that 30% until they buy, number one. That's right. Right? Number two, the way the markets are going, and if you track the numbers and you can see how people buy, more and more and more people are buying on these platforms, right? The younger generation, you look at my kids, where do they buy? They're buying on DoorDash or they're buying on whatever, Grubhub or whatever they're doing. Then if you then look at this and you say, okay, where's the opportunity here? Well, there's a huge opportunity because number one, you can optimize your menus in such a way, and that doesn't cost you any money. You can optimize it in a way that you will essentially rank in the top 10 or 11 of those, users, which is where about 80 something percent of the action happens, right? If you're not in that top 10%, you're missing out on potential sales.
In the first place.
In the first place. And then, of course, you're probably raising your prices just a little bit on this platform. So you're absorbing some of that 30%. So that's going to bring it down to about 20% on average, right? So you're really not paying 30%. You're really paying about 20%. And then if you direct some of that ad spend that you're spending on others' platforms and you put it very targeted and very intentionally on these platforms, which, by the way, it really, really allows you to do because the buying habits of these people are so sort of presented forward because the buying patterns are there. They're actually people that are clicking and buying. So your ad spend is more dollar per dollar. Yeah, it's way more targeted than even on these other platforms. You're going to see an increase in top line sales like you haven't. We basically guarantee about $100K annual per unit per operator, right? Per concept to come into your top line sales through those third-party platforms. We also then help you to optimize those menus to where you're getting your most highly profitable items sold, plus upsells, people on those platforms tend to spend anywhere between 26 and 32% more on those platforms. So they're actually buying more than they would have if they were sitting in your restaurant. Then you factor in the labor costs. You're not likely hiring an extra person to stand there and baggage those orders, right?
Yeah.
So this is all on top of, so it's bringing your overall labor cost down. So you're making margin there. Right. And so when you put all these pieces together and you ask yourself, wait, where do I want to put my marketing dollars and put my, spend? It comes out clearly third party on top. Right. And so what we're seeing in this space is I've got an operator out of Michigan. He's got a couple of like Japanese grills. He does about close to 70% of his business in each of his locations is on third party platforms. That's crazy. Out of that 70%, I think in his market, he's doing about 56% or so of his sales on DoorDash, because that just is the proprietary place. Out of that 56 something percent, over half of that is pickup, which he only pays about 3%, by the way. Overall spend on third party platforms with all of that volume is about between 6 and 8% of his overall sales, right? Which is actually lower than that. I think it's between 4 and 6% of his overall sales, which is from a marketing perspective, nothing. Right? And he's running a 24% EBITDA in each of his stores. He's self-funding the third location currently. Right? So, I mean, I love to talk about this stuff because, it kind of takes that whole conversation of third party and what's possible and flips it on its head. Now, we don't just focus on third party. We also teach people how to take people off of those platforms and put them into their own,
That's what I love. But you need to first bring people. Bring people to obtain, to basically like make them your own people. You need to first acquire the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a so you use the third party for guest acquisition. And by the way, they're basically paying you to do it. Right. And then you take them and you get them into your own system on your own proprietary apps and all those other things like you should do. So you can own the data. And then you come up with another system. The third part of that system is to remarket to those people through your own channels. And when you do that, you experience exponential growth. And this is the part that people aren't really talking about. This is the piece that, a lot of people are leaving out. And so we've developed a system that is incredibly and highly successful for our clients. And I just love to talk about it because I don't know, I'm a rebel, man. I got a lot of tattoos and I'm like, I like to go zig when everybody else is zagging. And this is one of those ways that we're just finding phenomenal results. And, and
I think it's basically like one of them, going back to what I said, like this whole like COVID and third party and commissions, people see this as a change for the worse, right? And I think like if you can see it that way, or you can just accept the fact that this is the world that we live in now, and you can ask yourself, how can I provide a customized experience for my guest who is, in many cases, are on these platforms looking for me? We don't usually do like turnarounds, but in one case that we worked on a turnaround, when our client came to us, year over year revenues were 20% down. And like they weren't really making so much revenue that like a lot of the hours of the day, like 2 p.m.s, 3 p.m.s, 4 p.m.s, 5 p.m.s, they weren't really profitable because their labor cost was so high. So the labor wasn't really, the denominator, like labor cost divided by revenue. Revenue wasn't big enough to, basically the prime cost sometimes in some restaurants was coming to 80%. When they came to us, and prime cost is the cost of goods sold plus the labor cost. Like the denominator, that's revenue, became so small that labor cost alone was turning into a loss, let alone the cost of goods sold. Obviously, we are cost experts, right? I never think myself as the revenue expert, so I lower the cost. But in this case, in order to do the turnaround, the cost just wasn't enough. So we had to go full on headstrong on the revenues. And when and I'm going to talk about the marketing piece as well as this piece. So the restaurant owner was doing marketing with a company who does the same kind of promotion with 100 other units, right? 100 other brands. And like the person who was responsible, like account manager, didn't really understand the economics. They were paying like $1,500 per location, fixed cost. When you don't advertise, because the owner didn't think that the advertisements ads were working, so he wasn't spending money on the ads, or he had like a cash flow. I think, okay, he had a cash flow problem. So he was paying the fixed fee, but not so much on the ads. I mean, $1,500, and why are you paying? When I showed him like this whole scheme has been negative for him, and with the returns for each restaurant, like he needs to put in like X amount of money in order to turn this like fixed cost into to break even on the marketing spend. Right? You have to spend money to make money, right? If you're not spending money on the ads, like the fixed spend is basically like a mental relaxation. I'm doing marketing. Where are the guests? Don't blame the guests if you're not spending money on the actual ads. Just because you're paying money to a company doesn't guarantee you getting the guests, because you're not paying for the ads that company is contracted to do. So, and that's why the marketing is super hard, right? Like people do TikToks and this and that, but it's basically like bunch of things coming together in a cohesive way. So what we found out, when I was looking at the total market, everybody else, the menu prices are super low in that market. And these folks are in the gourmet, in the upper scale. So what I've figured out is like, if they can only tap into the market, get their fair share, we will have a winner. Mm. And I saw the delivery platforms as that to basically use as the customer acquisition tool. Absolutely. We fixed the menus, went all in, and like very short period of time, because that market wasn't super competitive. And after a while, like they started ranking in the first page. And what we figured out through, like they were using Toast. What's great about Toast is, although individual solutions aren't perfect, right? It's so easy to implement. So they had their guest data and their loyalty data in the same place. And with the data analysis, and what we found is omni-market, when a guest becomes omni-market, an omni-channel guest, meaning like they basically become your guest in more than one channel.
Yes.
Dine-in, delivery, takeout, each one of them is a separate channel. They spend like multiple times over than another guest. And thus, if you're able to bring that delivery guest, create some kind of loyalty, bring them over to your restaurant, right? Then that's basically like a huge win for the restaurant. Each one of these guests will be a huge win for the restaurant. So in about 6 months or so after we started, maybe even less, the revenues were up 40%, 20% more than the highest year they have ever had in a market, their metro was actually in a downturn before the other metros, and their revenues were never higher with what you said. And after that, this company started to work with our mutual acquaintance, the delivery wizard, our mutual acquaintance, and I heard that he has done an amazing job. But even in this turnaround, we didn't initially intended to do, and it basically proves that it's not super hard to bring it from there to here. What you are doing is you bring it from here to here, basically, and changing the whole dynamic of the business. Because when you have enough revenue, then labor costs, and we can talk about the cost cutting and negotiating vendor contracts and all that.
Yep. You need the oxygen.
That's right.
You need the oxygen. Yeah, 100%.
Oxygen is super important. I can tell you. Oxygen, I need it. Super important.
No, that's great, and you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of these things, and we're talking here about strategy, right? It's like how do we put all of these pieces together to form our overall strategy? Every little piece kind of plays its role, And when we understand that and we're intentional about it, then we can actually drive, change, because we can measure the results. And, that's one of the things I love about putting together really effective marketing systems for restaurant owners, because, posting ads is only part of the story, but it's the only part of the story most people talk about. Let's talk about the in-house, teams that should be your best marketing team, or the people that are working for you. You're already paying them to be there. They could be building your loyalty lists. How many restaurants or coffee shops or wherever have you walked into, then they have a loyalty program. They've got Toast, right? They've got some other POS or something. And who's ever asking you, hey, would you like to be part of our loyalty program? It doesn't happen very often, right?
That's right.
So there's so many underutilized opportunities for, operators to really leverage the tools that they actually have that they're not necessarily using. And that's one of the things that we love the most, is getting them to go back to those basics. Just as we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, it's those basic foundation, fundamental principles that we need to be master for lap before we can take it to the next level, And so instead of searching for that shiny, this is my takeaway advice. Instead of searching for those big shiny pennies and chasing squirrels and the next technology and the next AI, there's great stuff out there. I could recommend quite a few different platforms that'd be very beneficial for your business. But before you go to all those places, let's talk about mastering the fundamental principles that you need to make sure you're running your business, right?
It's so funny you said that. I'm going to open up my latest, one of my latest stuff that I posted on LinkedIn. It's basically I don't know how people create super sophisticated, I don't know, a president talking shit about somebody. I don't know how people do that, because it took me 45 minutes to create this thing that I'm going to share now. Obviously, people are significantly smarter than I am. Okay.
AI, baby. It's AI.
I know. AI, here. People chasing shiny.
Yes.
Whereas they are passing by systems and consistency.
That's right. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So perfect. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
I mean, this is what AI, ChatGPT thinks a restaurateur.
That's a good one.
If only the ChatGPT was aware of your handsomeness.
I'm telling you got the best hair, man. I'm jealous.
One thing going for me.
We should put our two pictures together and see what it comes up with. Love it.
What I also think are about our existence, right? We both bring in multiple tried and true methods that worked in dozens of places. We don't fool around, and multiples of return. And we do the work, we do the implementation, we do the trainings and everything, right? People spend money on marketing because it's going to bring in bigger bucks, is the assumption. And the marketing companies are going to tell you there is no guarantee, right? We guarantee the results,
Yes.
It is going to work out and it goes back to the diminishing returns. When a company has done the same thing and only work their arm muscles, and their right arm is super strong, but everything else isn't. So if you just put a little bit of work on the other parts of the body, then those parts are going to flourish greatly. That's the whole diminishing returns, the diminishing marginal return story. So the fact that a lot of the parts of the business hasn't really gotten the right amount of attention from the right skill set. When the skill set is spent, enormous results are inevitable.
Yep. 100%.
Greg, I loved our conversation. I can go on for hours and hours.
It was my pleasure, man. Absolutely my pleasure. I never have a bad time talking to you, man. So let's definitely do it again soon.
Same here. Anything you wanna add before we wrap up?
No, listen, I just appreciate this conversation because it's really our goal, and I know you feel the same way because we've talked about this many, many times, is really just, anything that we can do to, give some leg up to the independent restaurant owner that's out there, trying to just, get their piece of the pie. That's what we're here to do. So, I always say, look, anytime I can be of service to you or to anybody in that way, hit me on LinkedIn, shoot a note through my website. Let's connect. I'm always happy to have a conversation with anybody that wants to. And I always offer my time to do that because it's important.
And how can people reach out to you? Email you?
Yeah, so you can, there's a couple ways. Hit me on LinkedIn is a really great way. I'm pretty active on there. And you can also go to our website, scaleyourrestaurant.com, and check out what we're into.
Then I'm gonna share all of these links in the at the bottom of this video in the comment section, so people can reach out to you and get a part of your wisdom.
Cool. I appreciate that, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. Awesome to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Bottom Line. If you found value in today's conversation, make sure you follow, share, and leave a review. Have a question or need a professional's opinion? Then be sure you reach out using the links in the show notes below. New episodes come out every other week, and until then, we will see you next time.